There's no doubt that Fallout 4's Automatron is beloved by many, but when it's compared with Fallout 4's other story-focused DLC, there's no denying that it falls behind the rest of the pack. With just 4 months between the release of Fallout 4 and the release of Automatron, it's clear that the team Bethesda had working on Automatron just didn't have a lot of time to work on this DLC. But since success isn't solely a matter of time, but rather is a combination of time, focus, and energy, it should come as no surprise that many of the issues that plague Automatron could have been solved not just with a couple more weeks of development time, but also by redirecting focus and energy to take many elements that are simply satisfactory and functional and make them excellent and satisfying. So kid out your favorite robot butler and make sure you've got some robo repair kits handy, because I'm Gray, you're watching Gray Gaming, and today we're going to look at 5 simple things Bethesda probably could have done to fix the Automatron DLC. Our first point is to literally fix the first time players encounter this DLC. More often than not, the DLC quest is triggered when we wander too close to Ada's campsite, which is under attack by junk bots. This can unfortunately trigger this DLC earlier than players intend, simply by them taking the Tucker Memorial Bridge or trying to visit Watts Consumer Electronics or any number of activities that might bring you to Northeast Cambridge. Now you can ignore the fight going down between Ada and the Mechanist minions, but this creates some inconsistencies in Ada's dialogue when she thanks you for lending assistance, even though you forced her to deal with it yourself. But more importantly for a lot of players is all of the random encounter locations are now flooded with junk bots and rust devils, a point we'll focus on a bit more in depth in a later point. So basically you get all of the headache of having started this DLC before you've even made any effort to explore it. Now there's a much better way to trigger this DLC. First and foremost, there is already a caravan distress radio station that's supposed to be the actual trigger for the DLC. It just so happens that if you don't listen to the radio station because you're intentionally attempting to avoid it, there are still other methods of triggering. So why not just create a pip in your boy after listening to Jackson's distress message that points to a warehouse behind Watts Consumer Electronics? To make sure players can't accidentally wander into this warehouse unless they know what they're doing, maybe make it a requirement that a specific key is needed to open the door, and that key's hidden behind some barrels or something. It's an internal cell, so there's no way that traveling too close to the trigger location will actually set off the DLC. Players would have to make a deliberate decision to enter the warehouse where we can find Ada still fending off the junk bots, while the rest of her caravan has succumbed to their advances. It's the exact same start to the story, it's just a lot more refined and a lot more difficult to trigger accidentally. While delving into the Rust Devil's base of operations, the sole survivor discovers Jezebel, a robo-brain that's been de-roboed and is in need of rescuing, and is conveniently in possession of the information we need to find the Mechanist. Under the condition that we get her squishy self out of there and give her a new robo-body, she'll help us out. So we can do that. Get her out, give her a body, and after she expositions us adequately to get the story moving again, she just clanks around the settlement where you built her chassis. Now there are tons of logical inconsistencies in Jezebel's character. When we first meet her, she says that she's only been able to convince the Rust Devils not to destroy her brain by feeding them information, but then very overtly implies that she's been feeding them misinformation. But if questioned how we can trust her, she says that her programming makes her incapable of lying. Either Jezebel thinks we're just as stupid as the Rust Devils or Bethesda does. Either way, I don't appreciate the implication. Todd. I passed my GED, thank you very much. Eventually. Anyway, after we give Jezebel her body, she says that the reason the Mechanist iBots claim that the robots are here to save the Commonwealth while their robots are out destroying everyone and everything in sight, it's because the robo-brains that are basically being used as squad leaders out in the Commonwealth have determined that despite their best efforts to save innocent people, there is a very high likelihood that the Wastelanders will eventually die anyway. So the most efficient method of executing their orders is to execute the people and limit their suffering to a bare minimum. It's a nice twist and fits the plot of Automatron very nicely, but remember when I say she just meanders around the settlement where you built her body? Yeah, she's not trying to carry out her mandate from the Mechanist anymore. It's apparently so important to her that she feels the need to espouse her belief in her mission, and even go so far as to say it's the only thing that guides her actions. But as soon as we've concluded our business, she's not immediately hostile to the settlers at whatever location you build her at.
Damn it, Turner, it just doesn't make sense.
But what's more of a missed opportunity is the fact that Jezebel is sarcastic, narcissistic, insulting, or just otherwise snarky in a way that seems like a cross between Piper and X688. But, you know, in a good way. I feel like it could have been so much better if we could have debated with Jezebel about whether the RoboBrain's overanalysis of their orders was in fact proper, or if their logic was somehow flawed, causing Jezebel to question her interpretation of her orders, thereby giving an actual reason for her newfound lack of hostility towards Wastelanders. Additionally, this would have been the perfect opportunity for a Mass Effect-style companion decision point. Jezebel offers to take you to the Mechanist herself, realizing that as long as other RoboBrains are out there being created and released, they will likely come to the same conclusions that she had, and that stopping the Mechanist is now the best way for her to pursue her prime directive. But Ada, understandably, does not trust Jezebel and is still on a mission to avenge her friends that were massacred by robots like Jezebel. If you choose Jezebel, Ada will become upset with you and refuse to serve as a companion until the main quest is complete, at which time she forgives you knowing that the Mechanist has been stopped. But not all of that broken trust can be regained, so she won't ever gain anything like a perk and you can never max affinity with her. If you choose Ada, Jezebel will turn hostile since you are now actively preventing her from pursuing her mandate to now stop the Mechanist. Unless you talk them both down with a very hard speech check. Yeah, I totally just ripped that off from Mass Effect 2 and I'm okay with it. If Jezebel comes with us, we could get funny interjections or explanations of what transpired here as we work our way through the facility, but we could actually get a moment of brevity once we reach the RoboBrain facility. Jezebel could comment as you move through the cell block that something about this place feels familiar and uncomfortable. She can get agitated as you enter the elevator and have to write it down with the automated gurney, possibly even have her try to attack it. As the two of you enter the brain extraction room, she screams in terror but doesn't quite know why, and maybe find an Easter egg somewhere that one of the patients listed in the facility terminal entries is actually Jezebel. Don't just tell us how horrific this place was, actually show us, through Jezebel, what the ends of these grisly means actually produced. As we reach the Mechanist chamber, Jezebel can try to plead with the Mechanist, stating that she's one of their creations and can speak firsthand as to the horrors that their robots are committing, but the Mechanist won't listen, believing that she's simply been reprogrammed by the Silver Shroud. Or Soul Survivor, whatever. None of this requires any additional level or quest design. It's all voice acting, decision trees, and if-then statements, which shouldn't have been difficult to implement in the slightest. Much like many things in Fallout 4, Jezebel can be summed up in a single term: wasted potential. Jezebel isn't the only character from Automatron that could have done with an overhaul. Now, Ada is the primary driving force behind the Automatron DLC. She's the one that has suffered personal loss, she's the one on a mission of vengeance, she's the one doing all the driving. But at the end of the day, this creates a bit of a problem for this DLC. You see, Automatron isn't a very long DLC at all. In fact, the entire DLC takes place in 5 locations total: the Caravan Campsite, a settlement of your choosing where you place a robot workbench, the General Atomics Factory, Fort Hagen Satellite Array, and the Mechanist Lair. That's it. That's the entire DLC. The storyline of Automatron reads much more like your average companion loyalty quest than an actual story expansion to Fallout 4. I mean, comparing characters like McCready, Nick Valentine, even excluding the things that were added in Far Harbor for his character, Curie and Kate, there's not a lot more story and character development than your average vanilla follower. This is perfectly fine. When I first owned Mass Effect 2, I gladly paid for the DLC to add Zaid Masani and Kasumi Goto as companion characters, and I'm quite sure I wasn't alone in that decision. So releasing a DLC as a simple companion add-on is not a horrible business practice, unless they sold the companions as individual packages, in which case I'm sure there would have been tons of backlash that Todd probably would have found a way to handle poorly. Okay, great, you're rambling, get to the point. Okay, the point I'm trying to make is that as a companion DLC, Automatron falls flat in the end because Ada just says, "Good, it's over now, let's get back out there." I wish that was an oversimplification, but it isn't. There's no more introspection from her, there's no more "I'm still struggling with how things turned out, no, I respect you and I'm grateful you gave me the chance to see this through." She doesn't try and go back to the Caravan Campsite to lay her friends to rest according to their own beliefs. There's no resolution to Ada's personal story arc, and to that point, there was no character development at all in the first place. Just a tiny bit of additional effort at the end of the quest line to tie a neat bow on it, or to give you a little bit more if you kept using her as a companion after the questline was complete, would have been more than enough to make this companion DLC, because that's pretty much what it really is, a perfectly acceptable addition to the game. There is just so much that Bethesda bungled when it came to Automatron, but I'm pretty sure you would be pretty good at liking the video if you're enjoying it thus far. Viewer engagement is the primary metric I use to determine the sort of content that provides the most value to you, a random person on the internet who has the power to decide if I can take a girl out to a nice restaurant or if we're stuck eating squirrel on a stick in the corner of my shack. I mean, it's not like anyone's lining up to go out even if I could afford it, but it would be nice to have the option, alright? Anyway, please, thank you, and now on with number 4. So I already went into this with my Is Automatron Actually Good video, but in essence, the level design of Automatron could have done with a lot of work. Now naturally, this is a 5 easy fixes video, so we'll limit our focus to the worst offender of the bad level design in Automatron because there probably isn't enough time for them to fix all of them. Let me run you through the Fort Hagen satellite array real quick. You fight your way through a cool underground tank depot where you find a complete suit of XO1 power armor. Now technically it's leveled so it might be lower, but let's say minimum it's a T51 and more than likely T60 or better. Then you find a really cool robot storage and maintenance room with a horrific looking sentry bot just chilling in the back and Jezebel hooked up to a computer bank. You grab her, then fight Ahab because why wouldn't a sentry bot be an actual enemy in a Fallout game? Then you fight your way through more Rust Devils in an infantry fighting vehicle maintenance room where you find a terminal entry explaining the background behind the Deathclaw skull fitted to Ahab before finding the big boss wearing her super special Tesla T60 parts, and that's pretty much the level. So the main objective for going to this place is encountered in the first third of the level. Then the mini boss that's supposed to be a jump scare but is just sitting in plain view comes out with no buildup of tension. Then you get to do normal dungeon dive stuff again where the terminal entries, which could have added that tension, are sitting, and then because you've likely already acquired an equal and or greater suit of power armor to what the big boss is wearing, it's basically as anticlimactic as the rest of this damn level. Now the good news for a sleep-deprived development team working on a stringent timetable is that all of the elements for a great memorable level are already here. They just needed to have been organized in a different order to be truly effective. A far better level design would have been for you to enter the facility and one of the first rooms you discover is Jezebel's chamber. But instead of being located in the robot maintenance area, she's located in a server room. Makes sense. This is an armor repair depot masquerading as a communications hub. So there would have to be some computer systems in this place in order to keep up that facade. The Rust Devils need computers to hook Jezebel into and attempt to hack in, and so she would need to be here. But by accessing Jezebel without proper authorization, you trigger a lockdown that locks the door behind you, and now you're forced to explore the rest of the facility in order to find a way out. That gives a perfectly viable reason why you can't just leave the way you came. So you have your conversation with Jezebel, and she still gets to make rude and semi-humorous comments throughout the facility. Then you pass through the IFV room and find the terminal about the Mechanists messing with their patrols, capturing Jezebel, and most importantly, about killing a Deathclaw and their decision to mount its head to an unknown robot chassis. So we know we're in for something wild up ahead, but we just don't know what kind of horror show we're about to walk into. Then we fight through the tank repair depot, sans power armor repair stations and chassis. Only now do we arrive at the robot repair facility with row upon row of robot charging pods, and for good measure there's a trashed RoboBrain chassis in the corner somewhere, showing that Jezebel's not going to be getting her original body back. She can even comment about this being the first place she remembers after being reactivated in this facility and lament the sad state of her old chassis. Then amid all of the Assaultron totems, a siren starts blaring and Ahab is raised from an elevator, ready to Deathclaw-tron its way through the sole survivor. After defeating Ahab, Jezebel can comment that the security alert that awoke Ahab no doubt alerted the Rust Devil she-boss of the presence of an intruder and that she'll be on high alert. So we move to the final chamber, which is the power armor maintenance and storage room, with our set of power armor in its maintenance bay and Ivy in her custom Tesla T60 power armor ready to ruin your day. To make it more glorious, if you can get to the power armor and climb in with the faster in combat animations, it would be all the ass kickery that you could hope for in a boss battle without the challenge of having to face them without power armor of your own. This difference in level organization, event triggering, suspenseful buildup, and increasing degrees of difficulty as you progress would go a long way toward making Fort Hagen feel a lot more like a necessary step to defeating the Mechanists instead of just another dungeon we feel obligated to explore because we dropped our hard-earned denarius on this DLC. I know asking Bethesda not to focus on Radiant quests and random encounters is like asking Netflix not to ruin our childhoods, but still, I feel that an inordinate amount of time was spent setting the stage for unending busy work, time that could have instead been spent on actual quest design. The Rogue Robots Radiant quest is a perfect example, where once it's built, it's infinitely repeatable, so designing 1,000 quests for the price of one sounds like a good investment, in theory. But when you have to figure out how to create an NPC that doesn't load until you're in an adjacent cell, but then you have to make it traverse the Commonwealth before it actually exists and track its location as it moves, and then give it a logical path once it does actually spawn in, it's quite an undertaking compared to the rest of the Radiant quests in Fallout 4 that all occur in specific marked locations and never move from that spot once the quest is triggered. In fact, so much time was spent on getting this mechanic to work that they tried to slip it in as the second act of the main questline and hoped we wouldn't notice. But we did notice. Todd. A big gripe that's been brought up in the comments is the sheer number of random encounters that are predominantly replaced with Rust Devils and junk bots, and those people are absolutely correct. But I would like to just say that Nuka World is just as bad of an offender, if not worse in that regard. And of course, there was the point from my Automatron review where the load screens get hijacked by Automatron as well. I would have much rather omitted the robot hunting quest entirely if it meant that time could instead have been spent refining random encounters and load screens to the point that they were still possible to occur, but appeared with roughly the same frequency as all of the vanilla options that we already had. And just as a side note on that, if the RoboBrains are the ones overanalyzing the Mechanist orders and deciding to kill people in order to help them, why do junk bots that are not traveling with a RoboBrain also kill indiscriminately? Way to go, Emil. Just trying it out. I think I'll stick with just bashing Todd instead. But let's be honest, those small mathematical tweaks should have just come from a quality of life patch in the first place, and the time gained not working so hard on the Radiants should have instead been spent on writing an actual second act, or probably more realistic considering the actual number of man hours that could have been freed up by such a decision, trying to tie the events of Automatron back to the main game in some fashion. For instance, the Minutemen could gain the ability to build their own junk bots, which could then accompany Minuteman patrols through the Commonwealth, or the Brotherhood of Steel could send research patrols to the Mechanist layer, allowing them to fit their vertibirds with assaultron lasers, making them much more survivable and less crashy. The Railroad could use all the encrypty stuff the Mechanist uses to improve their operational security so they don't have to rely on dead drops and war chalking as their primary means of communication. The Institute could create their computer network to improve the efficiency of their operations using RoboBrain clusters manufactured from synth brains, which would be more stable than the 210-year-old brains stolen from psychopaths still sitting in storage. At the end of the day, there is just so much more that Automatron could have done to make it stand on par with Far Harbor, or at the very least Nuka World. But these are the 5 fixes that I think were probably most within reach for Bethesda to achieve and still stick to a roughly 4-month development cycle. As always, I'm curious if these improvements would change how you rank the story-driven DLC in Fallout 4, or if you think it's a lost cause, or even if you think I'm just nitpicking and Automatron's fine as it is. I'm off to see if I can fit Codsworth with Ahab's skull, so until next time, stay safe, and I hope to see you here next time on Gray Gaming.